people don't need more cool people in the world. We need to be inspired. Like, the world desperately needs more inspiration, not to be fixed or changed, but to be inspired, to evolve. And when we give that transmission to others and that permission to others, it helps them evolve as well. I'm Kimi Inch, and I am most passionate in my whole life about introducing people into what's possible in their lives, especially their erotic lives, in and out of the bedroom.
Hey, I'm Taylor Davis. Welcome to Wildly Satisfied. I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, and we're back talking about how we don't want the old version of sexy, where it's superficial.
Right.
Where I think that we have all heard of like sex sells, and the sex that sells and is out there is not necessarily the truth.
Right. It's
not necessarily what we see in the bedroom. I mean, I think we've all had lots of conversations in our lives around, we're like watching a movie and we're like, that's not how that works. That's not what that looks like.
such a fantasy.
Such a fantasy. Or like even what we see online. I know there's a lot around like censorship and things like that of like sexy and what's not sexy and what's superficial around it versus what true eroticism and sexiness is. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, because I know we've had conversations in the past of what that looks like.
I mean, I get it, because when you are on social media, you're on the media and you're seeing, you know, these sort of exotically attractive images of people being oh so cool and sexy. It's very intriguing. There's like a mysteriousness about it, but it's also really a surface level of what sexiness is. It's like this like calm, cool, collected, like just always. Yeah, hair, like just perfection and mystery and all of these things, and like the cool girl, the cool guy, like it's so last year. Like it's all about being the alive girl. Like who is the woman that is really in her full essence and has access to all parts of herself, and is able to inspire her lovers and the people around her. That takes not just sex appeal, but a lot of heart, a lot of vulnerability, a lot of wildness. I mean, it could be all kinds of things, but what you see often is, you know, these ads and these people that are just too cool for school, and there's no substance there. People aren't craving more coolness in the world. People are craving to feel alive, to feel love, to feel explosions going on in their bodies. That doesn't happen when you stay surface. It's when you're actually willing to go beyond your comfort zone and actually dive into, you know, maybe the messier parts of yourself or the wilder parts of yourself, and maybe not always come off looking perfect, but being a yes to all of it. Like finding a way to be a yes to the messy, being a yes to the clumsy, being yes to the sensitivity parts of ourselves or the vulnerable parts of ourselves. That's what creates the flow and the magnetism and the aliveness that makes people feel so good.
I love that. It feels like it's a different level of integrity, where you can feel when people in the, like, let's say the old version of sexy, you know, the superficial version, you can't really feel them. And I feel like over the last couple of years, people have really started to understand that online I can feel who the person is, even if I've never talked to them in person.
Right.
And that in context of this, it's like the old version of sexy is like superficial, and you're like, yeah, I don't really feel that person's heart. Like, yeah, they might look sexy, but there's no depth there. There's no like, it's artificial beauty. It's all these things, and you're like, oh, like you can feel the out of integrityness. At least that's been my experience.
Totally. And that intellectualization. Like, I love smartness. I'm a sapiosexual, right?
Yeah,
so like,
me too.
I love being mentally turned on as well. I can't just like go for a pretty face. I gotta feel like there's some rapport, there's some depth, there's some intelligence there. So that's needed for me to get turned on. So I appreciate those qualities, and there's also a sense of like, what else you got?
Yeah.
Like, because if I don't feel your heart as well, if I don't feel, your sense of vulnerability, your humanness even, it's really sort of one note, like, and there's no range. And I think what's really sexy is people with a lot of range, like people that are actually able to play in extremes, that people are actually able to embody all different types of energies in themselves. I think that's what keeps things really interesting, because I feel like almost once you know a person, it gets too familiar. The familiarity. I think I'm close enough.
Yeah.
That piece is actually can kind of kill Eros a little bit. Like the safety, the security, the familiarity can be a little dousing of the Eros. But if you are able to instigate more parts of variety of yourself and bring that into your erotic scenarios and bring that into your life, into your work, like that's what creates novelty. That's what creates like that breath of fresh air. That's what creates intrigue. That's what creates that sort of sexiness, is like people that have a lot of range. They're not just always the same person all the time. They have this, and they have extreme pleasure in their bodies, and they have a big heart, and they have vulnerability, but they also are badass bitches that will take you down if you fuck with the people they love. Like they have all of it inside of them. Now that's what feels good. That's what gets people off, is feeling like, wow, this person has all types of ranges within themselves.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like playing a game of, if you know all those different ranges and you get to play in new ones and you make that a part of your curiosity and your adventure in your life, you get to be like, oh, what am I leaning into today? What am I playing with today?
Yeah.
Today I decided I'm going to be the badass bitch, or the queen, or the seductress, or whatever it is. And you get to lean into those energies. And those energies are like a range of sexiness depending on the situation.
Yes.
And I feel like that is really what brings out, like, with the different people that you get to date or you play with or your partners or whatever it is, you get to see that range.
Yeah.
And that true depth and sexiness, that's where it comes in.
Totally.
Because otherwise you just get bored.
Oh, yeah.
It's just bored.
Well, you said, like, based on the situation, I would even go further and say, like, when I teach a class, sometimes people will say, like, oh, you're so confident. How did you get so confident? And I'll say, well, on that sort of, to me, confidence can be a little superficial. So, and why I say that is because normally I've acquired a lot of confidence because I've had a lot of practice with what I'm discussing, and I have a lot of experience and a lot of training and education. So that's probably going to create ease in my body that conveys this air of confidence. But I tell them, I'm like, that's not what you're actually feeling. You're feeling my passion. You're actually feeling the places in me that are so fucking passionate about my purpose that I would kill somebody if they got in the way of it. Like, I would do whatever I needed to do because my purpose is my baby. Like, my purpose is everything to me. And that's what people are feeling. People don't need more cool people in the world. We need to be inspired. Like, the world desperately needs more inspiration, not to be fixed or changed, but to be inspired, to evolve. And when we give that transmission to others and that permission to others, it helps them evolve as well.
I love that. I've never really thought about it in terms of that, because people tell me, oh my God, Taylor, you're so confident, and in front of a camera and interviewing people and talking, whatever it is. But I'm like, really? Like, I don't feel like that. That's not the word that resonates. Yeah. And if you know me, you know that words are my thing. Like word witch, I love playing with what those are, because they elicit different responses in your body. And so the fact that you're like, no, it's my passion that makes me seem confident is beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. I feel like, what have you seen in the differences of like fake confidence, where we were talking about at the beginning, versus like, no, this is true, sexy, passion, confidence, whatever those words are.
Yeah. There are a lot of people on social media who are really good at talking the talk. I mean, they got the words down. They are clever. They have that air about them. And then I get in a room with them and I'm like, there's no congruence here. There is no walking actually the walk. And the idea of being in this intellectualized area of, especially when we're talking about things like eroticism and life force energy, that is something that comes from the body ultimately. And it's like, I don't want to hear it. I want you to show it to me. I want to feel it in the way you're looking at me, the way you talk, not what you're saying, but how you're saying it, the way you carry your body. I want to be inspired by the way you show up in the world. Like, that's what gets me excited about educators. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of people that are a lot of talk, and they haven't actually had a lot of life experience and their own personal bodily, visceral embodiments of the things that they're preaching. It sounds good, it sounds pretty, people are listening, but they're not the essence and embodiment and transmission of those things. And you can sense that when you're with them, that person.
Yeah, and I feel like we have seen, especially on social media, especially just in the world.
Goodness.
Oh my God. There's so many people who lovingly, I'm so glad that they're getting into these worlds and exploring new things, and whether it's like coaching or fitness or whatever it is. It's beautiful. But there's such like a small period where they're like in it for 3 months and they're like, I'm going to start teaching about it, or I'm going to start talking about it. And I'm like, no, like I can feel that. And that it's interesting to watch it happen, and how that in some ways is very harmful, superficiality wise. It's very, it can be very harmful. And it's like an invitation. It's really an invitation for the person to maybe go a little bit deeper before you decide to go outward. I don't know if that resonates at all.
It does, because I love enthusiasm and I love people that are excited about bringing their gifts to the world. And like you said, there's an idea of like, how deeply have you gone into this? Because if you're sharing it and you're wanting to bring people into what you're describing, they're only going to go as far and deep as you're willing to go or have gone. Period. And that goes beyond just, coaching spaces and teaching spaces. Also, that goes in our romantic relationships and our sexual experiences. It's like, if we want to enter into a situation where we're going to exchange erotic energy, we're only going to go as far as the weakest link, let's say, or the person who stops at a certain length is going to stop both parties. So it's this idea of like, doing it for yourself is actually the gift to the world. When you're not just about sharing the message, but you're about being the message, that is what impacts the world in positive ways. And that's what helps people really want to follow you to the ends of the earth, because they actually know that you've experienced it and you are living your truth in that sense.
That's, I think, why I always say, like, you're the gold standard for eroticism.
Thank you.
Like, you really are. People that have been in the space for a very long time have said that to me. I have experienced it myself, where I'm like, oh, I've been in other spaces that are beautiful in their own right, but the depth and like just the integrity, because integrity is really big for me. When you're out of integrity, you can feel it. And I'm a projector in human design. Sprinkle some. She's a manifesting generator, by the way. And so it's like dynamic duo of those. It's perfect. As well. But when I think one of the gifts as like a projector, and it's helped a lot in my work, is that I can be around certain individuals and I can be like, ooh, you haven't gone deep enough, or there's something out of integrity there, or whatever it is, not in a shameful way. It's just like there's something that feels off. And I think that's what leads into the superficiality of selling this big dream or sex or whatever it is that they're selling. But it's like, but there's not the depth. There's not that part, which goes into the false confidence side of things.
Totally. Like, you take really pretty pictures. Congratulations. And that's lovely. I love beauty and I love taking that in, but it also, like, to me, that the rawness and the humanness is really what I think beauty is. And when people are willing to actually travel into the depths of themselves and get really uncomfortable and get really messy and then come out the other side, then I can feel that difference of life experience within what they're saying and how they express themselves. It's such a different texture and quality to that experience with them.
Yeah, I feel like when you were just at the very beginning of this talking, what I saw in my head was like the pendulum swing,
right?
Where it's like on one end of the spectrum, you have the quote unquote confident, looks very good, the business guy or the influencer woman or whatever it is, where everything looks polished and beautiful and everything, but there's like there's something not real there.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it's when people go really, really deep into quote unquote vulnerability or anything like that. And it's almost like processing all over everything. And it's like, you have to be able to meet in the middle. Right. Where you've processed through those things. And that's where the confidence settles in your bones. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was confident.
Totally.
And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, people do see me that way. Or
well, it's interesting because in the erotic spaces that I curate and that I teach in, there's this idea of like, oh, what does it mean to be an erotic leader, or what does it mean to be in my dominance? And there's a lot of men and women that step into that role think it's this, I'm this all-knowing, like can't do wrong, very like certain of myself kind of energy, and I'm going to dominate you. And
very stereotypical.
Very, yeah, and that's what we're talking about here, like that sort of pendulum of like this this image, ego-driven image of what it looks like. But what happens if we're in a scene together and I just break down in tears? Are you going to be able to meet me there? Are you going to be able to meet me in the scenarios that maybe don't necessarily feel like the sexiest scenarios, but they're the most human scenarios? Like, are you going to be able to meet me there? Are you comfortable enough in yourself to really hold me in the depths of my pain and meet me in that place in the darkness and hold me in the darkness so that maybe we can transition back into the light again? But do you have that capacity? Because that's what people are looking for. And that's where the depths of intimacy can really go. And that's why people struggle with the superficiality, because they think it's supposed to look just perfect and cool. And it's not that. It's like, especially in sexuality and intimacy, it's some of the messiest places you can be. But can you navigate that? Can you be in your body and be with another person and face those sort of twists and turns and surprises that tend to show up all the time?
Yeah, you're talking, but can you walk your walk?
Right.
And it kind of reminds me of, I always say to people, like, there's a difference between talking to somebody and talking at them.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, and I'm going to use a Game of Thrones reference of when Joffrey goes, he's like, I am the king. And Tywin is like, anyone who says I am the king is not the real king. And I just thought about when you're like, the person's like, I'm this dom, that's just like this energy. And it's like, if you have to say that, or if you have to say, I'm a brilliant coach or whatever it is, it's like, well, you should just be showing that.
Yeah.
And that's where the confidence comes in. And that's where the true vulnerability, and that's how you know you've integrated and went through the pendulum swing and come into the middle.
Totally.
And be able to work with it from a heart-centered place.
I'm getting all worked up now.
Let
me just add, I also think like it's easy to hide on social media, but you can't do that shit in the bedroom. That's why I like starting there.
Oh,
that's why I like starting in the bedroom, in intimacy, in erotic scenarios, because there is nowhere to hide. We're literally naked in so many senses of the word, right?
I love this.
And if something's showing up in the bedroom, I guarantee it's showing up in other areas of your life. I guarantee that, how you do one thing is how you do everything, and how you do sex is how you do life.
Ooh, I love that. I'm like, mic drop. That was amazing.
Yes, well, it's like, hey, like we can spend 20 years in therapy, or we can actually bring consciousness to what we're doing in our erotic lives, which is the core essence of who we are, see what needs to be adjusted there, and realize that once we do that, it's actually going to start rippling into all areas of our lives. Because if we're showing up in our lovership in a different way, in our sex lives in a different way, it will impact the way you're showing up online, in your careers, in your family structures. It just has to, because it is the core of who we are.
I love this. And in the next episode, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this, because I want to talk about what that vulnerability looks like.
Let's do it.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening to this Wildly Satisfied production. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love it if you would share it with someone that you love, leave a review, or come tag us on social media at Wildly Satisfied.